Welcome to Social Science, Standard 9, History, Unit 6, The Middle Ages, Revision number 2. In previous video, that is revision number 1, we learned about the introduction of Middle Ages, Asia in the Middle Ages, China and Japan, different dynasties, how they ruled during this medieval period, or we can say that the Middle Ages. In this video, we are going to learn about Islam and the rise of Islamic Empire, disintegration of Arab Empire, Crusade and its impact, Ottoman Empire, feudalism. Finally, we are going to recap what are the things we learned in this lesson. Let us start to learn revision number 2. Islam and the rise of Islamic Empire. Prophet Muhammad established Islam. Islam gave message of brotherhood. Muhammad laid stress on the equality of all those who were Muslims, faced with persecution in his birthplace. Muhammad and his followers moved to the city of Yathrib. The flight of Muhammad from Mecca in 622 AD is called Hijrah in Arabic. It is now known as Medina. By the time of Muhammad's death, united under a common faith, the Arabs became a powerful force. Arabian. Abu Bakr and Umar, who succeeded Prophet Muhammad as Caliph, laid the foundation for an Islamic empire. In a short period of time, the Arabs defeated both the Eastern Roman Empire and the Sassanid king of Persia. Jerusalem, the holy city of Jews and Christians, was owned by the Arabs, and the whole of Spain and Persia came under the new Arab empires. The Arabs easily overran many regions. Egypt had suffered much under the Roman Empire, and so they opted for Arabs. Led by the General Tariq, the Arabs, after conquering Morocco and Africa, crossed into Europe and took Spain, which they ruled for many hundred years. The Arabs, until then largely nomads from the desert, became the ruler of mighty empire. They were called Saracens, which means the dwellers of the desert. Rule of Umayyad. The caliphs belonging to a branch of Muhammad's family known as Umayyad ruled about 100 years. Damascus was their capital. They developed new style of architecture known as Saracenic architecture. The arcs, the pillars, and the minarets and domes came to India later and blended with Indian ideas. The Muslims Arabs carried Islam far and wide. But while they were fighting at the distant lands, the Arabs at home were quarreling. All the son-in-law of Ali, the son-in-law of Prophet Muhammad, and his son Hussein were murdered. Umayyads were overthrown by Abbasids. This branch descended from Prophet Muhammad's uncle Abbas, and hence his followers were called Abbasids. Ruled of Abbasids. Abbasids' rule began in 750 AD, assuming the title of the commander of the faithful. Abbasid Caliph wielded authority as any other emperor. The Abbasids tried to rival the old empire's splendor. The capital was shifted from Damascus to Baghdad in Iraq. Arabs' scholarly pursuits. Abbasid scholars did not attempt to conquer new lands. Instead, they tried to consolidate the empire. They were more interested in scholarly pursuits. The Arab had a scientific spirit of inquiry. Medicine and mathematics they learned from Indians. Many students from Arabia went to Taxila to learn medical education. By third time, Taxila was a popular medical university in those days in India. Indian medicines and other books are translated into Arabic. Disintegration of Arab Empire and rise of Seljuk Turks. The Abbasid Empire was at the height of its glory during the reign of Harun al-Rashid. Soon after his death, the Arab Empire started disintegrating. Independent kingdoms arose everywhere. The Caliph became more and more powerless to control those kingdoms. The Turks, known as Seljuk Turks, who had become Muslims, succeeded in taking possession of Baghdad. They also defeated the Byzantine army of Constantinople and posed a challenge to the European states. The Christian pilgrims to the holy city of Jerusalem were put to a lot of hardships by the Turks. The resultant conflict led to the Crusades and fall of Seljuk Turks. The Pope and the Church called upon all the Christian people of Europe to march to the rescue of the holy city. The Crusaders had to fight against the Seljuk Turks who controlled those parts. The struggle between Christianity and Islam beginning in 1095 AD continued for nearly 200 years and is called Crusades. The Crusades did not achieve the desired end. Jerusalem continued to remain in Ottoman hands for another 700 years. This continuous fighting associated with the Crusades weakened the Seljuk Turks. The Mongol invasion from the east side lined this cause, and Christian and Muslims alike started shifting their attention towards the advancing Mongols led by Genghis Khan. The destruction of Baghdad in 1258 AD by the Mongols put an end to what remained of the Abbasid Empire. Impact of Crusades. Crusades ended the feudal relations. Many of the nobles who went to east to take part in the crusades either stayed too long period or did not return. The serfs took advantage of their absence to break away from their bondage to the soil. Increasing demand for products of the east led to the expansion of trade. Venice, Genoa, and Pisa emerged as important commercial centers in the Mediterranean region. Constantinople ceased to be the middleman in the trade between the East and the West. The elimination of powerful nobles had its influence in strengthening the monarchy in France and England. One notable outcome of Crusades was the loss of prestige suffered by Pope and papacy. Mongols and Genghis Khan. Already we learned about Mongols. Isn't it? They threatened to capture most part of the Asian country. We are going to see briefly about the chief, the leader of the Mongols. Mongols were nomads. They were herdsmen. The Mongols were experts in warfare and produced a remarkable chief, Genghis Khan. He was a great military genius. Mongols ruled over Russia for about 300 years, made Russia technologically backward from the rest of Europe until the end of Middle Ages. Ottoman Empire. When the Mongols advanced across Asia, this Ottoman Turks is different from Seljuk Turks, fled and took asylum under the Seljuks in Western Asia. But when the Seljuk Turks weakened, the Ottoman extended their power. They crossed over to Europe and occupied Bulgaria and Serbia and made Adrianople their capital. Instead of directly attacking Constantinople, they surrounded it and were biding their time. Yes, they waited for their time to capture the Constantinople. The conquest of Constantinople in 1453 by Muhammad II helped establish Ottoman supremacy in the Balkans, Black Sea, and the Middle East. For some time, Ottoman was strong and Christian Europe were scared of them. After conquering Egypt, they assumed the title of Caliph. They became a major player in the international power politics of the day, though weakened during the 19th century to formally ended only with the First World War. Feudalism state. Despite the hold of powerful religions such as Christianity and Islam, The economic life of people were governed by feudal relations. The king, supposed to represent God on earth, was at the head of the feudal regime. Immediately after him were the great nobles known as dukes, counts, earls. The relationship was one of the vassal. The nobles in turn had vassal of their fiefs to lesser nobles called viscounts or barons. Last in this order were the knights, whose fiefs would not be divided. At the bottom were the villains or serfs, they are called the slaves. The feudal system, which centered around vassalage, there was no idea of equality or freedom. The nobility and the clergy did not do any physical work, so the burden of producing the food and other necessities of life fell on the peasants and the artisans. Church. New elements were included in Christian theology. They were the priesthood and the theology of sacraments. The two instruments they followed: number one, excommunication; number two, interdict. Excommunication, it meant depriving a person of all the privileges of a Christian. He was denied the right to sacraments in church. His or her body could not be buried in the consecrated ground. Interdict was to deny benefits of religion to rulers subject intended to kindle their resentment against him. For example, by means of interdict, Pope Gregory VII succeeded in making the Emperor Henry IV to abdicate the throne. The growth of church in the later Middle Ages was accompanied by the rise of ambitious political leaders. By means of interdict, Pope Innocent III forced King John to recognize England and Ireland as fiefs of the papacy. Many pious Christians now began to resent popes introducing into state affairs. Yes, finally, we are going to recap what are the things we learned in revision 1 and revision 2. Number 1, China, which reviled Rome during the Christian era. After experiencing political instability, accompanied unity, and was ruled by the Sung dynasty for about 3 centuries. Number 2, Sung dynasty was overthrown by the Mongols, who established Yuan dynasty of China. Number 3, Japan, which remained in isolation, joined the mainstream in the 6th century AD, with Mikado becoming its emperor. Japan followed China in all walks of life. Number 4, the emperors slowly lost their control, and the command was taken over by the military general who founded the Kamakura Shogunate. Number 5, Kamakura Shogunate was replaced by Ashikaga Shogunate. Number 6, Islam established by Prophet Muhammad began to spread. Number 7, Arabs who took to Islam early succeeded in establishing Islamic kingdom first in Spain and later in other parts of Europe. Number 8, Umayyad ruled from Damascus while the Abbas ruled from Baghdad. Number 9, the fight for the leadership of Arabia after the death of Prophet Muhammad led to division in Islam as Sunni and Shia. Number 10, the architecture developed by Arab is known as Saracenic. Number 11, the takeover of the holy city of Jerusalem by Seljuk Turks resulted in the Crusades. Number 12, the weakening of Seljuk Turks led to the rise of Ottoman Turks. Last, the capture of Constantinople by Ottoman Turks ended the Middle Ages. Yes, students, I hope you may be once again revise and understand all those things in this unit. Thank you. Bye.